Hey guys, it's Adam from Premium Poker Tools, and in this video I'm gonna use the equity matrix to study a spot that a lot of you guys probably find yourself in. So, so the spot that I'm referring to is, let's say that you're playing against a short stacked player who seems like they're folding a lot, but every once in a while they're shoving. So they're kind of bullying people with this short stack. So let's assume that we open to $10. Let's say we're playing 1-2 and we have a short stack with $50, and then we open and they shove to 50, and everyone else folds, and it's on us. So in this spot, we put in 10, they put in 50, the pot is 60. We need to call. We need to call another 40. So the pot odds are 6-4 or 3-2. So how much equity do we need? We need about 40% equity. Okay, so let's take this spot and let's see if we can use the equity matrix to study it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off assuming that they're shoving all of their aces and all of their pocket pairs. And what you can do as a little shortcut to select these hands, if you click the Option key on a Mac, and I think it's the Alt key on a Windows, you do that, and the cursor is going to change, and you can do that. So when you're like a pocket pair or a connector, one gapper, it's going to go up and to the left. But when you're like here, it's going to do that. So let's start off looking at this spot where they're shoving all of their aces and all of their pocket pairs. So that's 20% of hands. So that's pretty frequently, 1 in every 5 times, 1 in every 5 hands they're shoving. So, and let's enter our pot odds of 3-2. So 40% required equity. And let's simulate. So what this is going to tell us is it's going to tell us how much equity all of these hands have against this range. So it's telling us that like ace 7 suited has 43.92 equity against this range. And it's highlighted in green because this has more equity than is required. So it's a light shade of green because it has only a little bit more. It's got about 4% more equity than is required. So we can kind of look at this and zoom out and see how we can respond to their shoves with different hands. So we can see that like when we have an ace, aces below 7 really isn't going to perform very well. If we have an ace, we want it to be like a 7 or above. We also see that any pocket pair is doing pretty well. So against this range, we can be calling with any pocket pair. But we see the smaller ones are pretty lightly shaded. We kind of have to get up to like 5s and 6s before we have a comfortable lead. And we can also see that there's some suited Broadway hands that have, maybe a slight edge against this range. But all of the offsuit Broadways really are behind. So if we see someone shoving, any ace and any pocket pair, we can think back to this and use it as a guide for, when we can call their shove. So remember, it's any pocket pair, aces above a 7, and maybe some suited Broadway hands against this very wide shoving range, about 20% hands. So then what we can do is we can look at different ranges. So what if they're shoving ace 7 plus and pocket 4s plus? I ran the simulation already, so you guys don't have to wait. And this is the result here. So when they tighten their range up, Now it's only about 13% of hands. Now it's going to be similar, but not quite as wide, like the hands that we can call. So before we were able to call with a set like ace-7 and ace-8, now those become folds. So now ace-10 is kind of a borderline. Ace-9 suited kind of works. So, our cutoff is more at like ace-10 instead of ace-7. And now these smaller pocket pairs are pretty borderline, and pocket twos is even a fold. So we can see how things changed. From here, against this range, we had ace-7 plus and pocket twos plus. Now we have like ace-10 plus and pocket threes plus. And these suited connected hands really aren't very good. And just as a little kind of comment, how do we figure out their range? Well, one thing that you can do is think about how frequently they're shoving. So, roughly this is 13%, before it was 20%. So if they're shoving 1 in every 5 times, you can kind of assume that they're on a range like this. But if they're shoving more like 1 in every 10 times, then it's going to be closer to this. So that's one thing that you can do to kind of figure out what range they're on. You need a big enough sample size to for that to be valid, but it's better than nothing. Another thing you can do, which is a really cool trick, is you try to figure out what the bottom of their range is. So if you see them shove ace-3 off, you don't have to wait to see ace-4, ace-5, ace-6. You can assume that they're shoving everything better than that, because why would they be shoving ace-3 but not ace-4? It's possible that they just, are an inconsistent player and just do things on a whim. But generally, it's a pretty good trick to see what the bottom of their range is and assume that they're shoving everything better. So that's kind of some things that you can do to figure out what range they're on. So we saw against this a little bit tighter of a range where we really want to have ace-10 or better and pocket threes or better. So now let's continue and say, what if they're a little bit tighter? What if they're shoving 7s plus and ace-10 plus? And I have a couple people in mind, actually, who I play with at Red Rock. I'm still trying to figure them out, but I think that they're shoving a range like this. I don't think they're shoving wider. And I still haven't quite figured out how to play against them, but maybe this exercise will help me. So against this kind of a player, we need to have a stronger hand to continue. So now we're really looking at like ace-queen plus and pocket 7s plus. So before we were at like 3s plus and 10s plus. Now we kind of have to get rid of 10s and jacks and stick to ace-queen plus, and we have to get rid of 3, 4, 5, 6. And even 7s and 8s, and even 9s a little bit, are kind of borderline. So against this range, to like comfortably call, we really need like ace-queen or 9s or better. So even though they're shoving a lot, we can't really get too frisky in responding to them. And now let's look at kind of a final range. Let's say they're even a little bit tighter, close to 5%, so maybe if they're shoving 1 in every 20 spots, if they're shoving 9s plus and ace-jack plus, now we have to get rid of our 9s, and ace-jack suited really doesn't work. So now against this kind of a range, we're really looking at 10s plus and ace-queen plus. That's what we can call their shove with. So, I say this a lot, but these tools that I've built or any other software out there can't tell you what your opponent is really doing. That's where your judgment as a poker player comes in. Like, you have to observe your opponent and think about what their range is. But these tools can really help you figure out how to respond to different ranges. So it's really cool to be able to study this stuff and kind of think to yourself like, oh, this guy's shoving about 1 in every 20 hands. I know because I studied this that I can only call with tens plus and ace queen plus. So this is really useful when you're. I mean, one of the applications of this tool is to figure out how to respond to these short stacks that shove. And I know I had trouble with this for a while, but after using this tool, I've gotten a little bit better. So hopefully this made sense. If it didn't, definitely shoot me an email, contact@premiumpokertools.com. I'd be happy to talk with you guys. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy the video, and thank you for watching.